Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today I'm with a media personality in Seattle. He has 2 shows on KISW. He has a podcast called the Defyant Ones, which is everything Defy Wrestling. And he also has a YouTube channel called Everflowing Stream. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to him about his background and also everything Defy Wrestling, because I recently went to my first show maybe like a month or 2 ago, and I'm kind of been hooked. It's like what's probably one of the best types of entertainment I've seen in Seattle, so I'm excited to learn more about it. It's my pleasure to introduce Kevin Diers.
How's it going? What's going on, man?
I've been looking forward to this, man.
Yeah, thank you. Me too.
So, first of all, like, explain to people what Defy Wrestling is.
Okay. So Defy Wrestling is state-of-the-art independent pro wrestling. It's really, like you were saying, top quality entertainment. It's a Northwest kind of, you would say. So most people are aware of like the WWF, WWE, the big time wrestling they see on TV. What they might not be familiar with is that there's actually touring circuits that are on the what they would call the independent circuit. And Seattle happens to have one of the top in the world, and it's called Defy. It started about, it was either 5 or 6 years ago. And it immediately started with some of the biggest names in pro wrestling. And, you know, they fly people out from the UK. They fly people out from Japan. There's people that, drive in carloads from Canada to this show. There's people that come out from Mexico. They really get some of the top talent to come to these events. And it's incredible. We host the home shows, the Seattle shows, at a venue called Washington Hall.
Yeah, that's where I went. Yeah,
historic venue. I mean, Jimi Hendrix played there, Fugazi played there. It's a historic venue in Seattle. They have the Massive Monkeys dance troupe that goes there. The Seattle Zulu Nation. I think that's kind of like their home base. So it's a kind of mecca for Seattle hip hop, and so it's kind of hallowed grounds for us to be there, and we really, honor and respect that space, but also kind of make it ours with, people get rowdy, and it's not like you're watching a television show. It's like you're part of it. You're literally on top of each other, screaming, chatting, chanting rather, not chatting, chanting, drinking a couple beers and just getting rowdy. And it's the vibe of a punk rock show. Like it really is just like so fun, and to be on the other side of it, being able to actually chat with the wrestlers is a dream come true.
Yeah, it was like I had to get out of my seat a few times because the wrestlers. It was this.
Yeah, you get out of the way. The security guard lets you know, you're in danger right now, so best get out of the way.
Fuck, it was awesome. And the music and everything, the intro. Oh my gosh! So why Seattle? Like, how did it come to be in Seattle? Did like the founders just happen to live in Seattle at the time or something?
Yeah, there's been a strong fan base of wrestling fans in Washington and Seattle for a while now, but it was really the brainchild of 2 specific people. A guy named Jim Perry, and he does a really cool podcast called Euphemet. It's a how would I describe it? It's kind of like they deal with a lot of aliens and
like a
ghosts.
Conspiracy podcast?
No, it's not conspiracy.
Okay.
It's but it's kind of like a spooky podcast. But he's a media guy. He's a producer and a podcast guy and just a really smart guy, but a huge wrestling fan. Then another guy named Matt Farmer, who's a former pro wrestler, and he's now he's a genius. He's a wrestling historian. And so these 2 came together, and when they came together, they formed this thing as Defy, and it was a long time that it was kind of, being cultivated. But from the first show, like I said, it was just like top talent and just like top production. It's just, they didn't, spare anything. It was just the best. So, and even the way it's filmed, very artistically, just a cool atmosphere, cool production. So why Seattle? I think that Seattle had kind of been starving for that thing for a long time. There were a long time where wrestling was seen, or Seattle in the Northwest was kind of seen as the black hole for wrestling, because we didn't have a lot of wrestling in the area. You know, back in the day, you would hear wrestlers say that they couldn't even get booked up here because there just wasn't anything going on. And so there was this, you know, kind of underserved fan base. And just so happened to be that there were the right minds came together to create this really awesome and creative and fun thing that kind of captured the imaginations of a lot of fans.
Wait, so is wrestling like a sport where it's in every city almost, or?
There are. Yeah,
Okay.
there are. So if you were to look up, you know, independent wrestling, there are tons of different promotions from the, you know, you go to Cleveland, there's a company called AIW, Absolute Intense Wrestling. You go to, you know, pretty much every city if they're a big city or a big market, you know, you would say, is kind of a brash way to put it, but you know, tends to have, you know, like Los Angeles has a few, and a lot of these wrestlers will kind of base their schedule around, you know, these bookings. And so, you know, one night you may have a guy wrestling in Defy, and then he'll take a red eye to, you know, Florida to wrestle in one of their companies. And, you know, it's all like this just below the surface of like the mainstream, but it's got a devoted and very loyal fan base. So
I don't even know if it's like the right thing to say. It's like Seattle's best secret, because like when I went there, it was completely packed. But I randomly just heard about it through a friend. Like I had never even knew this type of entertainment existed to begin with.
I would say when you think of wrestling, you know, I would understand like someone kind of chuckling at the idea of going to a wrestling show because they see it on TV and it's kind of, you know, kind of corny, but if you go and experience it and see for yourself, like you did, you know, it's in your face, it's fun, it's people flying at you, it's rowdy, it's a blast, man. And it kind of is a secret, not that you could tell any of the fans that, because they're all about it and they'll buy tickets, like, and they'll sell that place out. But to a lot of, you know, casual people or people that might be not aware of it, you know, they might not be aware that just like every month over in the Central District, Capitol Hill Central District area, there's like a really fun, crazy show going on.
It was super diverse too. From like, honestly, the crowd was pretty diverse, from like ethnicity to ages, and as well as the actual like. What do you call a wrestler a performer, or what is like the right?
It's like a strange kind of you know, mishmash of athlete / performer, right? So they're obviously in these kind of performative matches where, you know, there are predetermined results, but what you're seeing is pure athleticism, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
it's not like they're faking doing 360 jump off the top ropes, and when these people are bleeding, that's real blood. But obviously the ending is predetermined. So
who's that by? Like by the founders, by the way, or who makes that up?
I actually am not really that familiar with like who were to like write that or you know, come up with that. It's kind of something that I try not to really kind of ask about. I kind of just try to be a little bit have a little bit of mystery left to it, you know what I'm saying? So I kind of just react to it like and try to be as much of a fan as I can, you know, whereas I am familiar with a lot of the things that go on, but I try not to like really dig too deep on that, because I still like to have a little bit of the childish illusion.
I like that. So I think the one I went to, I don't know if this will resonate or if you'll be able to pick up on which one I went to or not. I think the Joker guy retired, or
Randy Myers.
Yes. So who is, okay, break down quickly who that is for people who don't know.
Ravenous Randy Myers is he is a enigma. He is this guy who is an incredibly, you know, he's like very gender fluid and very androgynous character who is just so incredibly passionate and accepting, and he captured the hearts of everyone in Defy. He is such a powerful like underdog in the wrestling company. He started from the ground up in Defy, and he he kind of started as just a character that came in and did some matches, and he came out to Etta James at Last,
Yes.
this like classic song, and he's just so unconventional and so unique, and he's just so Pacific Northwest. And he had an arc. The last match, the last show. Let me back up. We watched him go from kind of relative obscurity of being this person that people didn't really know, watching him battle from underneath, and we got to cheer him on along the way, and kind of be that they call the Defiance. They call the fans the Defiance. And so it's part of this community. The community really rallied behind him. And the final match before the pandemic, he won the belt. And everyone jumped in the ring, and he was like crowd surfing on people basically. Damn. With the belt. It was this epic thing. And then, a month or two later, the pandemic happens. And he's Canadian. And there is a lot of risk always of coming over the border without a proper visa, right? You want to do it legit way. You don't want to put any of your wrestlers in danger. And so Defy did what they needed to do to file these visas. And it took a long time, but he finally got approval to come over to the United States legally. And he did. And he came back, and it was like this glorious return, Wrestling had returned. Defy had returned for quite a while, almost a year. But him and the rest of the Canadian crew were able to come over and show up, and it was just this like triumphant return. It was so epic to see him back, and he had the belt. So he was still the champion, but like in UFC or in boxing, they had to crown an interim champion. So they basically crowned a champion because he wasn't able to come, right? So they did a championship unification, and he lost. And, there was a bit of an arc and a storyline, but part of that storyline that you showed up for was him officially being done with Defy. Now, I don't know. I honestly hope that it's not the end, because I love Randy. I love his character.
Goes by Weirdo Hero or something?
The Weirdo Hero. And, he really speaks to, he is an amplified version of who he really is. He's a stand-up comedian. He's a punk rocker. His character is so all about letting your freak flag fly and just embracing it. Your weirdo hero, your punk rock, your punk hunk is what he calls himself. And, he really champions the underdogs that have mental health issues or maybe dealing with depression. He always speaks to that in his interviews, and he's just such a positive force for Defy that I hope we have not seen the end of Randy Myers, but we'll see.
Heck yeah. And how does someone become a wrestler? Do you go to school for that, or like, Yes. And so, through the Defyant Ones, the podcast that I do, I've kind of asked that question. And what I've found is that now more than ever, it's a lot easier than it has in the past. There's wrestling schools. There's a few here in the Northwest. There's one up in Canada run by a few of the Defy wrestlers called the Lionsgate Dojo. There's one up in it's like Everett, just past Everett, and it's called the Buddy Wayne Academy. Buddy Wayne passed away a couple years ago, but his son, Nick Wayne, is actually the Defy champion. He's only... Oh, that's the young guy.
Yep, he's 17 years old.
Dang.
And he has a AEW contract waiting for him when he graduates high school. So when he graduates high school, he's going to be on TV every week. And he's the Defy. Can you imagine being in high school and knowing that all you got to do is just go to class, graduate, and then you're going to be a star on TV?
That's crazy.
Like, that is so badass. So there's a school up there that's run by some trainers, and so there's quite a few schools around. And yeah, you kind of just go to school to train to be a wrestler, and you eat your vegetables and take your vitamins and work your butt off, and then you might have a match in a few months.
So how many of these like Defy wrestlers have like? Would you ever see these guys working a day job at Starbucks, or like are they able to make this like a full career, or how does that work usually?
There is a tipping point where a lot of the wrestlers, a lot of them have side hustles, right? Maybe they don't have a day job per se, but maybe they drive Uber when they're home, or they, Uber Eats or whatever, or they have some sort of like email job that they can just kind of do from the road. But once their schedules really start to ramp up, the dream is that they're able to make a living off of it. And so we've seen, and that's kind of the dream, is to be able to watch the wrestlers live out their dream and live out that, kind of natural progression where their schedule ramps up, then they're getting companies to fly them out, and then their schedules book up, and then they're living off of their dream.
Heck yeah. Wait, so if there's a storyline, how much is it like you're able to determine your fate of becoming like a successful wrestler versus like you're in the hands of a storyline and you don't have that chance to become like a full-time wrestler?
I guess that's a good, I think that the crowd will always determine, you'll always listen to the fans, right? You'll always listen to what the Defiant says and who they want to cheer for and what reacts out there, right? If you're like dead set on, and this is, I'm not speaking for the promoters, I'm not speaking for the writers, but for me, if I was in charge of a company and I was dead set on someone being, that guy's going to be the champ, and it just wasn't working, either, they weren't putting in all their effort, the fans just weren't reacting, you kind of have to be nimble and learn on the fly, and people will always, go out there and prove it, that they're, worth investing the time or the story into and stuff. So
dang, that makes sense actually. Okay. And then how did you get involved with any of this like Defy wrestling stuff?
So I have been like a lifelong wrestling fan.
Okay.
I was a wrestling nerd that played with wrestling action figures. I watched it all the time. I did wrestling in my backyard in Kent. It was like the most trashy thing. Like we would jump off of, it was like very not safe. So we would jump off of like apartment carports onto each other. Like we would hit each other with baseball bats. We would just like don't do this on television kind of thing. We were basically a mix between Jackass and WWE, and we would just do it every weekend, and we would run each other over with shopping carts and just beat each other's asses. And I loved it. Fell out of it for a little while, but then came back, and I attended a bunch of wrestling matches, got really deep into and before you could stream any wrestling you wanted to on YouTube, you had to actually trade tapes. You had to go to these forums and trade VHSs with people. And so my friend was, he would get these tapes from these Japanese matches that we were just like enamored with, and all these kind of independent wrestling companies. And so I started to get deeper and deeper and more nerdy with it. And alongside that, just like a few years later, I went to school for radio. And I started to do my own radio show in college, and that led to doing my own radio shows professionally, and started learning the art of podcasting and learning the technical side of things and how to interview, and I went to journalism school, got a degree there. So I kind of just married those two perfectly together, but it didn't come, the Defyant Ones wasn't a day one thing. It was always, there were shows where I was doing backstage interviews. There were shows where I was posting, social media content. I've been a ring announcer. I'm actually going to be a ring announcer this coming Saturday. I'm filling in for Steve Miggs.
Wait, for Defy?
Yep.
There's a Defy this? Dang it.
This Saturday. Exactly. So Defy is coming up this Saturday. I'm going to be, I'm kind of like their fill-in ring announcer. So I'm the guy who does the introductions in the ring.
That's awesome.
Steve Miggs is the main guy, and, he's like beloved. But there's actually some wrestlers who think it's crazy that the ring announcer is like so popular. It's just like, wow, this guy's more popular than half of us. It's like Steve Miggs is such a beloved guy by the Defiance. And so, I got to kind of fill many roles. I was, like I said, I did some of the social media content for them. And it wasn't until the pandemic that we had this idea. Me and Jim kind of came up with this idea that, there was, I'm not sure if it was quite a year, but there was that time where nothing was happening. No concerts were happening. It was very much in that thick of lockdown.
Yeah.
And we were just trying to be, trying to come up with ideas of how to keep the fans engaged and how to keep the, content for Defy flowing. And I came up with the idea to start interviewing some of the wrestlers. And it started off very, one really crappy microphone in my apartment with like lagging internet. We didn't even have video yet. It was just audio only, and it has blown my mind how much it has grown since then. In 2020, in these 3 years, they saw the vision, and we put it on the Patreon, and it started to gain some steam. But it wasn't until we went full in, and we have now a crew that helps out. We have someone who, so I will come into a space not much different than this. We'll go upstairs, and they have a media room upstairs at Washington Hall that we rent out. And we'll have a wrestler, say, sitting right there, and I'm sitting right here, and we'll have 2 cameras shooting back, so it's very professional. And we'll have the professional microphones, and it's we have an editor, we have a graphics person behind it, the audio. It's incredible to see how much they've invested because of they've seen how they've seen the potential, they've seen the growth. It's just so cool. I had a memory pop up on my Facebook of just like the first interview I did, and it was just a selfie of me in my room during the pandemic, and it was just like, it's so cool to see. You just keep going with it. Just keep going. You see the vision, see where it can go, and then just keep going with it. And as the return to wrestling really ramped up, so has the podcast. So that's where it is now. It lives on Patreon. So the full interviews live on Patreon. Also on the on-demand service, Defy On Demand. It's where you can catch the full YouTube video.
Like on demand, the actual.
No, it's Defy On Demand
is
what we call it. It's like it's a streaming. It's like a streaming network that you kind of just subscribe to, and you can watch all of the Defy events.
That's awesome.
And then you can watch all of these videos of the Defiant Ones. But then, so the Patreon, so you see the videos on Patreon. We're going to start uploading the audio to, so people don't have to be a part of the Patreon to listen to it. But so every Wednesday we release a new episode, and we share clips of it on all of our socials. So, 1 to 2 minute clips of it. And then once in a while, we'll upload a freebie on YouTube, like a full one that I sent you. So
heck yeah. That's awesome. Damn. Yeah. So what is, for other podcasters, like what's your advice when it comes to like creating a Patreon? Like I've given some of my clients advice for Patreon, but I've never even stepped foot into like making my own Patreon even.
Well, I'm not so, I am very aware that the main reason why a lot of these Defiant fans, why the Defiants subscribes to the Patreon is because we give pre-sale codes. That's where you get your pre-sale codes to the next event so that they can get in early. The Defyant Ones is a part of it, but it is almost like a perk, right? So it's like added bonus, right? I don't know if we would necessarily get as many subscribers if it was just. So obviously the pre-sale codes is a thing.
That's
so
smart as fuck. Wait, how do you get? So you have like a full-on like relationship then with Defy?
Oh yeah, I work for Defy.
Okay, see that's.
So I'm backstage at Defy. Like I'm part of their Patreon. It's not. I'm a independent contractor, you would say, but I'm with Defy. I don't. So at a Defy event, I'm given full access backstage to go up and chat with a wrestler and then bring them upstairs to interview.
Damn, that is awesome. Okay, so then that's another thing then. Like for me as like a independent like podcaster, I can get backstage if I'm either friends with the person performing or if the guest is in town and we've already set up like a interview and then they want to chill afterwards backstage or something. But I've always thought about like how does one get like a residency with a venue or something. So how did you build that relationship where you could like you're kind of the Defy podcast guy?
I think just through all those different roles that I was ambitious enough to kind of dip my toes into and just kind of try to help out where I could, you know, through whether it was, you know, helping film a backstage promo, interviewing, stepping in to do it was pretty much just having the ambition and being trustworthy enough to know that I can be the official voice of that. I'm not going to act out, right? And I'm not going to misuse that kind of trust and their name, you know, because I'm not, you know, officially Mr. Defy, right? But like I am very much a face of Defy.
Yeah.
When you see Defy tweet, a lot of times it's my face interviewing these wrestlers, and they put a lot of trust in me to be the media arm of their company.
Damn.
And so I don't take that trust lightly. And so I think that just kind of building that relationship from the ground up and them seeing that I was always down to, you know, put in the extra hours and, you know, really just work my ass off to whether it was posting a Facebook video or anything. So
that's amazing. Damn. Yeah. That's pretty inspiring too. Damn.
Thank you.
Fuck yeah. So with that, when you're interviewing wrestlers, what is the flow for people who haven't seen your show yet? Yeah.
I try to keep it kind of you know, I try not to get into the drama, the backstage drama. I try not to, you know, ask too heavy of questions. I really look at them as kind of personality pieces. They're pretty short form. Typically, the longest one would be about a half an hour. So they're not, you know, 2-hour long sessions with these people. We get them, and these people are really kind enough to take 20 minutes out of their hectic schedule. A lot of times they're, you know, just got off of a match and they're sweating their ass off. And they probably rather be, you know, outside cooling off or, you know, drinking some water, eating some chips and just relaxing. But they take the time out of their night to chat with me. And I'm very gracious of that. I like to know their backstory. I like to know, do they have a side job? Do they have, you know, and I always ask them, you know, I tend to ask them how they're doing and, you know, kind of just get their idea of, you know, where are they from? How'd they get here? You know, how'd you hear about Defy? First off, that's important to me. If they're someone who's not a homegrown Defy talent, if they're someone who's flown in for the evening. And then I like to know, you know, if they're fans of wrestling, what was their first experience with wrestling?
Yeah.
You know, I like to know as a little kid, what caught you, you know? This is kind of a weird thing, you know, being a wrestler's, you don't see that many wrestlers, right? It's kind of a weird thing. It's kind of a weird thing that I'm sitting here talking with, you know, someone in spandex. It's cool, but it's kind of odd, you know, not everyone has that dream. And if they do, they don't follow through with it and they don't put in the time and the hours. So I kind of want to just know that story. And then, you know, I like to ask about music or, you know, films that they're into, you know, just fun things. I like to ask them one question that I always ask, and I ask this I host the 2 radio shows you mentioned. I ask that it's in the majority of my interviews because it always tends to, the last interview or the last question of my interview is always pick a scar on your body and tell us the story of how you got it.
Okay, that's awesome.
And so there was a hardcore fanzine called I Stand Alone that I used to read back in like 2003 or 2004. It was an old fanzine. You familiar with what a fanzine is?
Guessing it's a fan magazine.
Yeah, it's like a DIY fan. It's like a not mass produced. It's, you know, probably make 100 copies of it. People will make it, you know, and just print it on their own and sell it for a couple bucks. So there was someone named Adele Collins, and she made this fanzine, hardcore fanzine called I Stand Alone. And I completely stole that question from her. So it's not my own, but I have used it for 20 years almost.
Wow.
And asked that question. And so I put it to good use. And I've asked everyone from, the big wrestlers to the local bands. And especially with wrestlers, it tends to have a good story. And I always like when it's not a wrestling related scar.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something like a little mishap, like they were skateboarding when they were a little kid and bonked their knee and, have a gnarly scar. So, just kind of try to be, kind of peel back the onion a little bit, but just have fun with them. And sometimes it gets deep, sometimes they talk about how wrestling has helped them battle depression. Sometimes they talk about, there was a wrestler recently talked about an illness that he overcame as a kid. And it's just, I don't typically go into it with a ton of written questions that I'm going to ask. I know some basic things. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
So I know where they're from. I know a basic history of them, but I try to just have a conversation and really pay attention to how their verbal cues, really interact with them as like someone who's really listening, right? I get nervous sometimes, and I try to just go into it not over prepared.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like even for me, as long as I do the research and I have the basic knowledge, sometimes when you're too focused on what you're going to say, then you stumble up and then you forget all the questions. Yep. You know what I mean? It's like stage fright almost. Yep. Okay, I get that for sure. Now I want to flip it on you. What is your favorite scar?
Oh man, my favorite scar. So, you mind if I move this real quick?
Yeah, for sure.
So, you can't really see it because I have a tattoo over it, but there was a scar here on his face, and like I said, you can't really see it, but there was a scar in here, and I got it when I was a kid. My friend and I, we were fighting on his bed. Excuse me. We were fighting on my friend's bed, and his braces got caught in my arm, and it ripped. And then, so I had, and immediately was just like busted open. My arm was just bleeding everywhere. His braces got caught on my arm, was ripped flesh. And then that night we were stupid and decided to wrestle some more. And I fell on the exact same wound onto a fighter jet pilot, like a metal fighter pilot jet.
Mm-hmm.
And it opened it up even more. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Brutal.
Oh.
So I had to get some stitches on that one.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What the heck? That sounds super painful. I think I know exactly the type of fighter jets you're talking about too. Dang. Okay. That's such a good question. I need to figure out. I wish I had like a
go-to.
Yeah. I just have the same, which you'll get at the end of the interview, about final advice. But wow, that's super cool. So do you have like a fan favorite interview that you've done for the Defyant Ones? And also on top of that, do you have returning guests? And if so, who's your favorite like returning guests?
Fan favorite, I would say, was Eddie Kingston. Eddie Kingston's interview I sent you. We made that one free. And he's just so real. He's just absolutely, he is not a gimmick. He's not a character. He's just so honest and so real. And I love watching him on TV. He is, someone that was considering giving it up for so long because he was hustling and trying to make a living. And it was kind of just a happenstance. And it just so, he kind of had a viral tweet that, got him signed. And it was so much of he basically just put it all out there and said, like, he made a challenge, and then the fans that had been watching him for so long got behind him and rallied behind him, and then he made it on TV, and he rose to the occasion. But he's, so down to earth and just so real. So that was my favorite interview I've done so far. I have not had many returning guests. Yeah, we've been toying with that though, because I've done so many interviews now that I'm going to try to interview Nick Wayne because I've interviewed him, but not as the champ.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a game changer, right?
Yeah, for
so
sure.
he's a 17-year-old champ now. So that's a big deal. So we're going to make that a priority to interview Nick Wayne. And so I think he'll be one of our first like returning guests. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's every month.
Every Wednesday.
The
Defy
podcast
event.
is every Wednesday,
Yep.
and then Defy itself is once a month.
About
Okay.
once a month. Sometimes they'll take maybe 6 weeks off or 6 weeks or so, but it's typically once a month in Seattle. But they're starting to branch out, so they have Portland events. They're doing a humongous event in Yakima, the Yakima Sundome. That's going to be a very like lucha Mexican wrestling centric show. They're also doing a show in Toronto. They're doing a show over in the UK.
Wow.
And so they're really branching out in 2023 and doing. Yeah, going big.
Heck yeah. And then what got you into media to begin with? You said you went to school for it.
Mm-hmm.
So what drew you to radio?
Just listening to the radio as a kid, man. I would make little tapes with my sister, and we would have our little tape recorder and pretend to be DJs, and listening to KISW and 107.7 The End, and my college radio station KGRG. So listening to DJs like Bill Reed and Marco Collins and people like Kathy Faulkner and Metal Shop, the show that I host now. These shows kind of changed me and taught me so much about music and about culture. And I was just enamored by it. And I discovered KGRG, which was a college radio station, is a college radio station out in Green River College. And they were playing really underground music and like punk and pop punk. And they had a hip hop show on there and a reggae show and a local music show. And if you could, I lived in the range where if you use your antenna and you kind of like do it this way or that way, you could hear it at a good range. And it was like All Request Friday. I would make my requests, and they had like a hardcore show and a punk show and a metal show. And I loved it, man. I knew, people had these big aspirations to like, when they get out of high school, I knew I wanted to go to Green River and be a DJ there. And,
wow.
and that was kind of it. That was what I knew I wanted to do. I didn't know after that where it would take me, but that was my goal, was to just be a DJ on KGRG. It was the simple part of it, and made that happen. Got my own specialty show, which is a show called Dead Air, which still lives on today. That's actually like,
whoa,
yeah, it's going to be going on 20 years, and the fact that there's a show that I started in 2004 that is now, has had hosts well beyond me. That is something that I consider to be the coolest thing that I've done.
Wow.
I've been able to host these shows that other hosts have passed down to me, but the fact that something I created is now being passed down, that's something that I'm really proud of. So it's called Dead Air.
And what it's about?
It's a hardcore punk
Okay.
and kind of like heavy music radio show. So.
And you're like a total like metalhead.
You would say so, yeah, for sure,
yeah.
for sure.
So you have Loud and Local?
Yep, host Loud and Local on Sunday nights on KISW.
And what is that about?
That's a 2-hour show that features local music from the Northwest here. I play everything from Spokane to Seattle to Puyallup to Everett. So it's like all local music. The station is a rock station, so it's tends to be rock. It can be a little bit on the lighter side of the indie rock style, but a lot of it's a little heavier, from the heavy rock to heavy metal to punk to ska to like indie, some singer-songwriter stuff, but just rock music from the Northwest. And so that's this the Sunday night show is Loud and Local, and then Saturday night is a show called Metal Shop, which is, from what I understand, the longest running metal specialty show on commercial radio. It's, I was listening recently to an interview with a band called Queensryche from 1983.
Dang. On
this show, Metal Shop. And it's a legacy show. It's there's people that listen to that show that have been listening to it since they were little kids, and they're 50 years old now.
Wow.
You know, and that's a huge responsibility for me to be able to sit in that chair and host that show that has such a legacy behind it. But it's, you know, it's a dream of mine, and it was kind of crazy how it happened. Me and my college radio co-host at the time, Ian, we entered a contest to be the next host of Metal Shop back in 2010.
Wow.
Yep, they had about 150 applicants, and we won the show live on the air. And
Wow.
the next week we were on the show hosting Metal Shop, the show that we had always listened to and never dreamed of being the host, because, you know, who gets that opportunity?
What the heck?
And so then 2 weeks later we were on stage introducing Slayer in front of WAMU Theater. You know, it's
Dang.
like it happened like that, and it's just been a whirlwind since. But
What was the contest like? How did you get to
so the hosts at the time, Kevin and Steve, they were retiring from Metal Shop. I think Kevin wanted to go camping on his Saturday nights.
Yeah.
You know, Steve wanted to pursue other things, and so they didn't want Metal Shop to end, and so they just said, like, send us a demo tape and send us a playlist and send us your resumes. And luckily, Ian and I we had a chemistry. We have a chemistry, and we had been doing radio for so long that we had access to record a semi-professional-ish demo, and we made a playlist and we sent it in, and that was how you applied. And then there were 3 finalist contestants, and we went up on KISW on a Saturday night, and they gave us an hour to pretend like the show's yours.
Yeah.
And they kind of grilled us, asked us some questions, and kind of tried to, you know, it was like it was live on air. It was crazy. And we were hella nervous for that week. And then when they called us, they kind of were like messing with us on air. They're like, sorry, but, you know, you're not the winners. I'm sorry, man. And I was like, wait, why'd you call us? We're not the winners. And then there's like this pause, and they're like, just kidding. And me and Ian were freaking out. And I remember I lived off Broadway. I lived right behind Julia's on Broadway. And I ran out in the middle of the street and just screamed, fuck yeah, as loud as I could. And I like was jumping on my friends. It was a party, man. So that was a time I'll never forget, man. Was literally winning a contest to host Metal Shop. It was like triumphant.
That's awesome. And you said at the beginning of the podcast how like WWE is kind of like punk, or Defy is like punk. So
Defy is punk, yeah.
So would you say Defy is metal then?
I
think that's what the people say or used to say. Or that's a thing, right? Metal's like cool, right?
Yeah. It's like super metal. Yeah, I said it's like I always kind of equate the punk rock spirit to like an independent spirit, right? And that's why I was calling it punk. I wouldn't necessarily call it metal. There's characters that are pretty metal, you know, pretty. I think when some of the wrestlers are bleeding, it's pretty metal.
Yeah.
You know? Some of that violence is pretty metal, you know. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call it metal per se. But
how do you like? What is why do you like Defy, and like why do you like WWE as well? Like what? Because I've always seen it on TV, like to the fact that it exists. I've never actually sat down and watched something besides the show I've been at. But like, what really draws you into this type of world?
I think it is kind of a release for me. You know, it's kind of a fantasy world. You know, I have such a respect for the talent, and I just I don't know. It's hard to really pinpoint exactly why I love it so much, but I think that it is really one of the most pure forms of entertainment, because it's like Broadway, but they're beating each other's asses.
Yeah.
And it's all happening in front of you, no retakes. And it's like a high wire act in front of your face. There's a little bit of violence. There's a lot of fun. some comedy. It's just a blast. And I think when I was drawn as a kid, you know, it's like superheroes, right? You're drawn to it as a little kid, like, because it's like superheroes. But then as I started to peel back the onion a bit and learn more about the inner workings of it, and then realize, you know, a bit of these, you know, what makes these characters tick, and you know, you just kind of go down this rabbit hole and learn more about everything about it is just so interesting to me. So
but are you still a fan of WWE, or is Defy and WWE just completely different to you in your opinion?
They're very different.
Got it.
I still like WWE. There's I'm more watch this company called AEW, which is basically the rival to WWE.
What's the difference between them?
It's just two completely different companies.
Got it.
It'd be like the NBA and like, say there was like a rival to NBA.
Got it.
Like two different professional leagues. They have two different shows on two different networks. I've been watching more AEW lately, but I still watch WWE. It's fun. I don't have as much invested in it. Don't always watch it week to week, but I'll always have my fandom, you know. I still get a kick out of it, and I still listen to the podcasts that talk about what happens with the matches and all these different things, and I'm always, you know, peripherally invested in it. And I just, you know, some people are sports guys.
Yeah.
Some nerds like me are wrestling guys. Some people are nerdy metal guys. I happen to be a nerdy wrestling metal guy. You know, it's just kind of quirky and kind of niche, but I like it. So.
And what draws you to metal music?
It's a good question. So, also kind of a release. There's the technical aspect of it that's really cool, like the musicianship, but also how how do I put this? I just think that it's the most like metal hardcore music. It's just so untamed.
Like raw.
Raw, exactly. Untamed, and just like I don't know, it's just it's not the only style of music I like.
For sure.
But it's a lot of times what I'm listening to, like shows I'm going to. After this, I'm going to a metal show. So,
oh, heck yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's just, you know, furious and loud and abrasive and fun. You know, I think a lot of it is just fun. Like, I don't take, you know, when a band like Cannibal Corpse has a song like Hammer Smashed Face, it's all pageantry. It's all like wrestling, you know. It's a character. They're up there joking. It's like a horror film. I like horror films, and so it's like the soundtrack to a horror movie.
You like Rob Zombie?
I do.
Me too. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
I do like Rob Zombie. I got to interview Rob Zombie one time. He was really cool. Yeah.
What?
Yep. Backstage at Rockstar Mayhem Festival. Got to interview Rob Zombie. Yep. I was told, everyone told me it's gonna be a hard interview. It's gonna be a hard interview. He's gonna be a dick. He was cool to us. I don't know if he's.
Wow.
He was cool to us. So.
Damn, you've actually met Rob Zombie, and that's crazy. That's what's super cool about meeting like other interviewers. It's almost like showing each other like your trading cards.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, I've had this guy. You know, that's
totally.
Damn.
Yeah, got to interview Rob Zombie, and I think that same day we interviewed like Slipknot and a couple of when there was Rockstar Mayhem Festival. It was kind of like what would be like, it would be like the metal version, like a touring Coachella, right? Or like a or like this big music festival. And so, you know, they would have this media tent in the back, and because we were from a legit radio station, and that was, I kind of think before like podcasts had developed as much as they have, we were given a lot of access, and we had worked out a lot of, you know, who would be interviewing. And so we had a tent, and they would kind of just walk the stars through and the musicians, and we would get like 10 to 15 minutes with these people. So we would interview, and sometimes you would go on their bus, if it was like a Slipknot. Rob Zombie came through, Megadeth, Slayer, Anthrax, these big acts, and that tour is no longer, but those kind of things still happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, Seattle hasn't had one for quite a while, but it was always fun because it was like a lot of hurry up and wait, you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, get jacked up, and then just like, all right, you just gotta wait, you just be nervous. And we would get out of there with 10 interviews with these like cool ass artists, and so we're like, all right, we have content for the next 2.5 months.
Yeah.
It's just like, all right, we're good. We got
awesome.
all these interviews, we can just bank for a little while. And it was always so fun. And posting all the pictures from that week, like, check out who I'm with, Rob's on, it's just like made you feel cool.
And so as a radio host in Seattle, and as well as a podcaster, what is the importance of both? Like, especially what is the importance of radio in Seattle? Like, because I'm a podcaster, I had dabbled in radio, but I would say, and someone asked me today, even if I got the opportunity to have like a radio show, would I take it? And I don't know. I actually don't know. That's how much I love what I'm doing with podcasting and like the community I'm building. But I think it's important to bring on like I just had Supreme LaRock on,
legend,
and Martin Douglas, and so I think it's important to have a space, even as a podcaster, to bring on radio hosts. So, what is the importance of radio in Seattle for you?
I think the idea of like, so podcasting and versus broadcasting. I think broadcasting, there's an importance there because there's no barrier of entry. You have a radio, you can hear it. The podcasting, I think I love it, but there's a little bit more of a barrier of entry. Like, it's a little bit more niche, a little bit more focused, and as far as broadcasting, I'll always have a love for it. I always have a love for being able to turn on the radio and tune. I'll listen to all the different stations. I want to know what's going on in the city. There's so much good radio in Seattle, and I think that it's just the voice of the community, and that's why I think it's so important that that there is still a local show on a station like KISW that's been around for 52 years. I get to be the voice of the music community in Seattle, and I'm not someone who's like inaccessible. There's literally just a page on KISW.com where they can just send me direct link to their music, and it shows up to my inbox. I check them all out. It's
repeat that. I tell everyone, I tell all the artists I know that you guys are accessible, and everyone feels like there's some crazy barrier to entry to like reach out to you guys. So repeat that one more time for the audience.
Go to KISW.com. You just go to navigate to the Loud and Local page and just send me your tunes there. You can send me a SoundCloud link. You can directly, attach a Dropbox link. Your whatever artist link. I almost said MySpace. That's how old I am. Facebook link or whatever. No, so any Spotify, anything like that. It might take me a little while to get through all of them, but I'll eventually hear all of the artists, and it's it directly sends that to the people who will then send that for everyone. And I think that most of the DJs in Seattle, most of the artists, or most of the DJs and the hosts, and whether it's any station that are doing local shows or specialty shows, tend to be pretty accessible, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
And the ones at least I've met seem to like actually love the community too, and they want to uplift. So, that's always important too.
Absolutely, man.
So, as a metalhead, who is your favorite local metal band?
Ooh, that's a good question. Who's yours?
Fuck.
I know. I'm stumping you.
I don't know either.
There's a band called Witch Ripper that I absolutely love. I don't know if I would call them my favorite because people are going to beat my ass. People from all the other bands. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But there's a band called Witch Ripper I've been really digging on. They are kind of like a heavy stoner metal kind of vibe. They just recently covered Soundgarden. Did a Soundgarden cover. I absolutely love that new record. I love the new Sandrider record. Um, but Solicitor is incredible. They're like a really good kind of old school heavy metal band. There's so many, man. There's just such a rich underground metal and hardcore scene in Seattle, and it's been really fun watching it grow,
Yeah.
and especially the all ages scene.
Yeah.
Especially I love seeing kids like dressing up freaky and painting their faces and coming out and moshing. It's like so cool. It just reminds me of when I was a little kid and seeing all this stuff. You know, places like the Vera Project.
Yes.
You know, where I get to just, you know, be the old guy and watch, you know, I'm like, wow, okay, you know, I'm the old guy here now, but it's so cool to, you know, watch that next generation come up and be given access to, you know, this form of weirdo music.
Yes. I'll have to say, I'm just going to, because they've been on the show, I want to say Action S, if you know Action S.
Action S is great.
Yeah.
They're great.
I wanted to say, I have to go with them because they've been on the show.
Yeah.
For
Awesome.
sure. Yeah. Fuck yeah, man. You're a dope guy.
Thank you.
I need to, I think.
You should come up to my radio show.
Please,
sometime.
please.
Yeah. Or why don't you come to Defy?
Yes.
I'll have you come and you could sit in on one of the interviews.
I would love to. I wish I can come this weekend. I have a wedding DJ event this weekend.
You're a wedding DJ.
Yeah.
That's badass.
Yeah.
Okay. See, you're like a side hustler like I am
yes.
too.
I've at least, if I'm going to have side hustles, I want it to be related to music stuff.
Okay.
So
nice.
Yeah, damn it. I really want to be
set
involved.
It up.
Yes.
We'll have you kind of sit in on one of the interviews and watch it, and how it.
I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Like I guess one last time, if you can say like in a sentence, like why people who have not checked out Defy should check it out. Why should they? I'll give you 2 sentences.
It's a perfect date night. It is absolutely the most energetic live. I mean, if you like drag shows, if you like burlesque, if you like punk rock, if you like sports, it's a lot of those kind of elements. It's live action. It's violent theater.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fun, and it's very much in your face. You are not watching a taping of a TV show where you're not a part of it. You're there chanting the names. If you yell something, the wrestlers will hear you.
Yeah.
You're a part of it, and it's so cool to watch how it's grown. When you hit me up, like I had been watching your podcast, I saw yours with Martin. So I was stoked that you had come out to Defy, and it's like the more people that like you and the more people that can see it, need to see it because it's fucking awesome.
Yeah. It definitely, sometimes I get in like a rut where I feel a little uninspired in Seattle. And recently I went to like my first burlesque show and then also Defy. And I just feel like very like ramped up again and excited to be in a place like this and to connect with people like you. So thank you for taking your time to do this.
Absolutely, man.
With that, what is some final advice you have for up and coming artists, creators, influencers?
I've been thinking about this lately and something that I don't know if it's necessarily advice because I don't know how it will turn out, but it seems to have been doing pretty good for me, is that for better or worse, I'm leading by my passion. Not always, it's been a long road and, I've had to, take some L's along the way, and the monetary thing wasn't always there. It didn't always pay off. But I've led by passion. And I think that if you follow your passion, then you will be rich in spirit, at least, and you'll be rich in life experience. And, just that's what I'm doing, and hoping for the best and just, staying busy. Also take time for yourself.
Yeah.
I am a workaholic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. And so part of what I've experienced is that, I traded my active alcoholism with active workaholism. So I took all of that alcoholic energy that I was fueling into that, and then was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be drinking, so let's just work. And so I have to cool it sometimes and just realize like that I can not always have to work on a project.
Yeah.
So I'm oftentimes too overambitious that I need to just chill out and have a day to myself. So, giving yourself some time and grace, I think, is very important. So,
Yeah.
Lead with passion and give yourself some space and some grace.
Yeah, for sure. I connect with all of that. Also, one last thing that sounds weird, but also has inspired me. Some of my friends are in recovery, and I recently got back probably 2 months ago now. Before that, I've been going. I'm not in recovery, but like I've actually gone to a few meetings with my friends to like hear people's stories, and like even when I was in Alaska about 2 months ago, I went to a meeting there even. So like, there's just people have like stories to tell, and you can learn so much from so many different types of people and on their journeys. And so I'm in a place right now where I'm just trying to like learn and just feel inspired. So once again, thanks again for being here.
Absolutely.
What is the easiest way for people to reach you one more time?
Sure.
And follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram at KVNDRS, like my name without the vowels. You can follow my radio show at Metal Shop KISW. If you want to reach out to me, if you're in a band or a musician, you can go to KISW.com, click on Loud and Local. There's a tab there to send me your music. Or if you want to follow Defy, it's at Defy NW on Instagram, DefyWrestling.com. There's tickets to all the events, the Patreon where you can watch the videos. It's on all the social media platforms. Pretty easy. Just remember Defy Wrestling. So
heck yeah. This has been the NAST podcast with
Kevin Diers.
And we did it.